between $2 to $4 trillion of commercial real estate loans are coming due this year and next year. You're going to see defaults on office buildings that we've never seen before, and it's going to bring down banks.
So today's pod is going to be a real treat. Joining me is Mr. Gerald Celente, founder of the Trends Journal and a renowned market and societal forecaster. I've been listening to Gerald for probably about a decade now, and I think he's probably best known for his no BS approach to the markets, economy, and as I mentioned, even societal issues. So with a 40-plus year track record, he's called some of the biggest market moves, the 87 crash, the dot-com bust, many gold bull runs, and even ironically, or kind of funny, the rise of gourmet coffee long before our friends at Starbucks were even a thing and we were paying $5 or $10 for a coffee. So Gerald describes himself as a political atheist, free from ideological biases, which in this day and age, even in the financial world, is pretty rare. He analyzes the trends as they are, not as, his political beliefs or personal beliefs may want them to be. And that's, I think, what truly sets Gerald apart. So today we're going to dive into his thoughts on the economy, geopolitics, and what's coming next. Gerald, welcome.
Well, thanks for having me.
Our pleasure. So obviously, before we get started, this isn't financial advice. Know your risk tolerance, do your own due diligence, and speak to a financial advisor. So before we jump in, Gerald, I always love to get a little bit of background on our guests. Now, you've spent, as I said, over 4 decades forecasting trends, investing, essentially connecting the dots. Now, this isn't a typical career for most people. I think it's an exceptional career. You have to have a different mindset to be able to I guess, predict the future in a way. Take us back to the moment in your life that got you following this career path. How did you get involved in trend forecasting?
I was the number 2 guy running a major trade association at 30 years old. And I was also a government affairs specialist, killing environmental legislation at the height of the environmental movement back in the 1970s. I was 28 years old. I was staying at the Willard Hotel and putting my meetings on at the Hay Adams, which is right across from the White House. I only wanted to make money. I didn't care about anything. And I started to grow up. And what really made me grow up was the Iranian crisis that began in the late 1970s. And that's when I became a political atheist. I write about it in one of my books called Trend Tracking, far better than Megatrends, Time magazine. They, just like they teach us to hate the Russians, they taught us to hate the Iranians that were protesting against the Shah. Shah, some arrogant daddy's boy that they brought in after they overthrew the democratically elected government of Mossadegh in 1953, when Mossadegh had the nerve, the gall to say, no, that oil doesn't belong to Anglo-Iranian oil, better known today as BP, or Standard Oil, better known to ExxonMobil. It belongs to the Iranian people. The only newspaper that finally reported the information, by the way, was the Financial Times in 2017, when they finally released the data from Winston Churchill and the MI6, and another arrogant little daddy's boy, Kermit Roosevelt, who was the great-grandson of Theodore Roosevelt. The CIA and the MI6 overthrew the democratically elected government of Mossadegh in 1953. So now what happens? The protests start breaking out. They had enough of the Shah. Carter comes back. The protests are going on. He goes visit the Shah. This is when I became a trend forecaster and a political atheist. He comes back from spending New Year's Eve with the Shah and his wife. He says the Shah is the island of stability in the Middle East. This is as the revolution's going on. So as everybody's taught to hate the Iranians, like they've taught us to hate the Russians all my life, I said, I bet oil and gold prices are going to go up. And I started playing the futures market. I put a $5,000 bet into each one and brought it back in 1978 79, I brought it up to almost $750,000. And I quit my job. And that's when I began to forecast trends, looking at things for the way they are, not the way you want them to be. And I was the assistant to the Secretary of the New York State Senate. I worked on major political campaigns in Westchester County, the richest county in America at the time. Designed and instructed a course in American politics and campaign technology, how to run campaigns, and I taught it at St. John's University. I was on the other side. That's why I know what I know. If I wasn't on the other side, I wouldn't know. And then again, I started to grow up. That's a whole life process of growing up. When I was a kid, I was about 16, 17 years old. My father, may he rest in peace, we're eating dinner. He looks at me, he said, son, they say that youth is wasted on the young. He took a couple of more bites and he said, they were talking about you. So it's a learning process and you can't stop learning. And you mentioned a magazine, I've never worked harder in my life. We give our subscribers the best we can. We keep learning.
So let's get into today, modern times. I mean, you've been over the last, 43 years of your career, as you've mentioned, you've seen a lot: wars, crashes, booms. When you look at the state of things in 2025, I mean, these are interesting times to say the least. Does anything stand out to you as the biggest kind of unfolding trend that most people, primarily investors, are missing? Is there a big trend forming right now that everybody's missing, or the majority of people, investors, are missing?
Let's go back to 2023.
Okay.
3 banks failed: Silicon, First Republic, and Signature Bank. The markets were collapsing. Gold prices were spiking.
Yep.
3 banks. Let's go back to the office building bust. The COVID war started, 5 years ago, 2020?
Yep.
Leases are down too. They're not renewing their leases. When the banks got all this money, when the COVID war broke out, and they got treasuries when interest rates are 0. They don't have the dough to back this up. Again, depending on the data, between $2 to $4 trillion of commercial real estate loans are coming due this year and next year. You're going to see defaults on office buildings that we've never seen before, and it's going to bring down banks.
When you say bring down banks, now I know those bank failures in 23 were massive, but will this touch the majors? The Bank of America?
Some of them. Most of the loans for the office buildings are in small and medium-sized banks, but the big ones have them too. Mm-hmm. It's going to affect everybody. And no one's talking about it. I'll give you an example. Last year on 50th Street, Midtown Manhattan, a building that was occupied one time by Sports Illustrated, but middle of the street. It was sold in 2006. I forget, it was either $312 or $320 million. It went up for auction. They sold it for $8.5 million. The thing's in the middle of the block. No windows on this side, no windows on that side, nothing in the back. So all this baloney that we're going to convert them into housing, office buildings built within the last 50 years are non-convertible to residential apartments. They're just big empty spaces. So that is our major concern. And number 2, as I say, sometimes people will call me a futurist. I say, nobody can predict the future. There are too many wild cards, whether they're made by nature or humans. So look at the wild card that was just dealt this week with the DeepSeek. And now Alibaba came out. Did you Alibaba came out?
Yeah, I saw Alibaba today, yeah.
And they said they even better than DeepSeek and cheaper.
I saw, yeah, exactly. I've been holding Alibaba for years. This might be they might be able to sustain some actual gains now. I don't know, but what do you think about DeepSeek? Do you think it's a monumental shift?
Absolutely. By the data.
Have you looked at the news today? You have all these, well, not all these, but you have the OpenAIs of the world, Microsoft looking at possible, I guess it's data infringement, but probably copyright laws are in play. They want to sue them now, or they're looking at legal action potentially.
So this is a Trends Journal copy of it back in 1999 when it was a quarterly. Now, of course, it's a weekly, about 200 pages a week. You read what you want, from high-tech science on and on to geopolitics, economics. .com overload will short circuit many high expectations for huge profits in internet commerce, entertainment, and a wide array of dot-com services. Following the holiday season, many of today's high-flying internet stocks, the emerging hottest IPOs, and newly emerging IPO wannabes will have begun their deep descent from their overloaded heights. We said the dot-com bust would happen by the second quarter of 2000. It did. Happened in March. The NASDAQ lost 80% of its value. We said this because the internet revolution, it really started to begin like around 92. Trends are born, they grow, they mature, reach old age, and die. This trend was just born, the internet revolution. And then they're making stuff up. And when I was saying to myself, you know what they're saying with this internet? Yeah, this thing is going to keep going. But what they're coming out with, this is a lot of baloney. This thing's going to bust. We are at that same stage now for a different reason. This could be dot-com bust 2.0.
Why?
Look at Nvidia stocks.
Yeah.
It went down what? They lost almost 600 billion bucks in one day.
Biggest one-day drawdown in the history of the stock market.
And they down 17%. Oh, then they bounced back, what, about 7 or 8%?
Yeah, yesterday.
And now we're on the air. As I just looked it up, they're down over 7%. So they're back down to the 17% level. You make connections between different fields. Look at all the energy plants that they were going to build. Now, when you go back to DeepSeek and Alibaba, they're coming out with way, way cheaper chips, older, not expensive. What did it cost Nvidia to create? It cost them what? I think $6 million compared to $100 million.
Oh, DeepSeek, yeah, compared to OpenAI, yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
If you believe the numbers,
I believe it. I believe it, particularly what Alibaba came out with today. Yep.
So you're saying AI is a commodity, it's a race to the bottom, everything's going to get cheaper, but won't that help economic productivity? Won't that be a boom?
Absolutely. AI is going to, love it or hate it, AI is going to keep expanding.
Right.
No question about it. But over invested in the trillions of dollars that were pumped into the market in all these different AI sectors. And again, make the connections. You're not going to need these big power plants.
The projected energy demand may be a fraction of what they're estimating, which would be trouble. So when you look at AI, that's such a rabbit hole. There's so much to go down there, but let's just jump to Trump real quick, because you have some awesome takes on Trump, and it's very clear-eyed. You're not delusional, of course, as we talked about. You know the game. So Trump's presidency, both previously and already in his second term, has been, anything but conventional, right? He wants to, or so he says, acquire Greenland, the Panama Canal. He's not floating. He's threatening tariffs on Canadian goods up to 25%, which, obviously hits close to home. He also said, though, that, the Ukraine-Russia war would be over day one. It doesn't seem to be anywhere near over. And he's also wanting to tariff semiconductors unless they're built in America. So it seems pretty protectionist. It reminds me of everything I read about Herbert Hoover back in the day. Now, I could be wrong. But how do you see Trump's presidency playing out for the U.S. economically, but also global economies? Is he good for the dollar? Or it seems like there's a bunch of cracks forming, but what's your take on Trump? Where does this go for the U.S. and global economy with his policies? Because he's been going gangbusters in about a week.
I had lunch with his brother Robert back in 2017 when Trump was president. And the brother went on to tell me that the father left him over $500 million in real estate when he died.
Interesting.
I think he died like in 2002. So he's a daddy's boy.
Right. That's not the narrative that he describes. It's a little bit different.
I'm just telling you the facts.
Yeah. I appreciate that.
We're the same age. I'm 78. One of my books is my favorite. There used to be a TV show, Everyone Loves Raymond. And the woman, Doris Roberts, who played the mother, her last starring role was playing my aunt. Zitzi.
No way.
Yeah, Zitzi is the Neapolitan dialect for auntie. And this is one of my books, what Zitzi gave Honey Boy. She used to call me Honey Boy. I write in the book how I grew up in the Bronx, and I was the youngest of 5 right after the war. They couldn't control me. And biggest threat was, you little bastard, we had enough of your shit, you're going to military school. And of course, I'll be good. I mean, my mother, may she rest in peace, is great Italian chef, cook, I'm going to go to military school. Trump was so arrogant that They sent him to military school. The military school was in Cornwall, just about 40 minutes south of here, in the middle of nowhere. So imagine, here you are as a teenager, dressed up in a stupid little costume, telling when you got to go to bed, when you got to wake up, do this, do that, and eating crappy food. He was so narcissistic that they sent him away. So let's go back. You mentioned, hey, you elect me, I'm going to end that war in 24 hours. And then he gets in, I'm going to end that war. War's going to be over before I get into office. Hey, it's going on. It's still going on. Well, maybe it's going to take 6 months. Oh, you mentioned the 25% tariffs? Day one, when I get in there, I'm putting 25% tariffs on Canada and Mexico. It got sown. How come you didn't do it? Oh, because I'm full of crap.
You think he's
How
going
about
to do
that? Let's go back to the facts. When he got elected, promised 3 things. By the way, we had called him a winner. I didn't think he'd win this time. I called him a winner back in 2016 in the Trends Journal in May edition when everybody said he'd lose. Because he promised to go in a whole different direction. And again, they did to Trump the disgusting crap about Russiagate and all that. Total baloney. They went after him right away. I'm totally opposed to that.
That divided the country for a long time. Still not fixed.
Yeah. So anyway, going back, he promised to improve the infrastructure. He did shit. He promised to build a wall. He built a little bit. And he promised to cut taxes. He did. He cut taxes in 2017. According to the Tax Policy Center, he cut the taxes saying that when I cut these taxes, what's going to happen is they're going to use this money for capital improvements. He cut the taxes in 2017. According to the Tax Policy Center, the 1% got 64% of the tax cut value, and they didn't use it for capital improvements. 2018 was the biggest year of stock buybacks in America. That's what they used the dough for. Now let's fast forward to now. Trump is going to do everything he asked about the dollar, everything he can to keep propping up this economy. And I believe we've said this, it's in the Trends Journal. I said it on a number of podcasts going back. And I think the Trends Journal in edition in November, it's a weekly, I think it was November 12th, that I said that regardless of what Wall Street is saying, that the Federal Reserve is only going to lower interest rates twice, they're wrong. Trump is going to keep pushing to lower interest rates to jack up the economy and the equity markets. So let's go back to
will he succeed at that though?
Will he succeed? Okay. Let's go back to 2018, December.
Right.
The
Market
worst
correction
since the Great Depression. The worst December since 1931. What did he do?
Put pressure
What
on
happened
Powell.
in January? What happened in January?
Yeah, you're right. Rates
went down. They're in control. They're not this. It's one big club. And look who our Treasury Secretary was under Biden. Ms. Facha Brut, Janet Yellen. Where did she come from? Oh, the former Fed head was our Treasury Secretary? I'll tell you another Treasury Secretary story. Oh, by the way, he says he's going to release the JFK assassination papers. I have a photograph of me and John Connally. John Connally was the governor of Texas that was sat in front of Kennedy that took the bullet in the back. You can see the video. Nellie, his wife, throws herself on top of him. Anyway, Connally wanted to meet me because in this book, Trend Tracking, that I wrote in 89, I had forecast there'd be a new third party and someone like Ross Perot. So he wanted to meet me. So I have a photograph of me, him, and his wife in front of the book depository. And it's their first time back since the assassination. I'm not going to go into the whole story, but I'm talking about Treasury Secretary. He was the Democratic governor of Texas when he took the bullet in the back. As we're going back into the Anatole Hotel, he said to me, I read your book. He said, it's a fine piece of work. He said, I know your heart's in the right place. He said, but you don't have a clue what's going on. And neither did the American people, because if they did, there'd be a revolution in this country. This is the John Connally that took the bullet in the back as the Democratic governor of Texas. That was also the Republican Treasury Secretary under Richard Nixon that took us off the gold standard. As George Carlin said, it's one big club and you ain't in it. And by the way, George Carlin's brother, Patrick, who passed away recently, used to work for me. So I've been with presidents, prime ministers, and princes. I've been on the other side.
But how do you function? We need them. And maybe not at the same scale, but we need some.
You don't need any. You look what they do in a place called Switzerland. It hasn't been in a war since what, 1850 something?
But they got
Everybody
cantons
got
and
guns.
yeah, that everybody's armed. They train for military at in their teen years or early adult years, but they got, a couple dozen cantons. They have politicians. Nothing ever moves because it's fragmented and everybody's kind of sort of in the center.
The people vote. Direct democracy. You want to go to war? Let the people vote. Let the people vote.
All right. So there's two trends that I want to touch on before you go. So number one, let's get into gold because you and I are certainly on the same page with the precious metal. U.S. stocks are near record highs. The dollar relative to its peers is as strong as it's been in, call it 2 decades. Bitcoin is back near its peak. AI hype it's everywhere, as we've talked about. Yet gold continues to push to new all-time highs. What is driving this? Usually, I mean, historically, when the dollar's rallied, gold's contracted, but they're rising in tandem these days, or at least they're strong in tandem these days. So what's driving gold's rally? I think it's back near 2,800 bucks. It recently hit another all-time high. Where do you see it heading over the next 12 to 24 months?
I would have thought gold prices would have gone down when Trump got in, which they did.
Yeah.
And they went back up because he backed off on his tariff threats and the dollar weakened. The dollar is going to get weaker as he lowers interest rates. The lower the interest rates go, the deeper the dollar falls. The deeper the dollar falls, the higher gold prices go. So I'm still very bullish on gold. And the ECB just lowered interest rates. And Trump said again, we said that Trump would lower interest rates because this is our forecast that we made months ago, that he's going to lower interest rates to keep the U.S. economy thriving. He's totally invested in it. And look what he's doing in the pressure to bringing oil prices down. And you see him going down. He's told the cartel, the OPEC, lower prices, drill, baby, drill, because he knows inflation is going to go up as interest rates go down. So he wants to keep other things down as much as he can so they don't go up so high. Oh, by the way, the consumer confidence level index just came out. It's down again. It's still not bad, but it's going down. And again, we only go by data. Restaurant business is really getting bad because the prices are so high. I mean, you go out now, it's $100.
Oh, it's crazy. Canada's even worse. Canada's worse. I go out for a dinner with my wife. We order a decent bottle of wine. It's $250.
That's what I'm saying. So business is going down. Trump is going to do everything he can to pump up this economy. The more he pumps it up, the lower the dollar goes. The lower the dollar goes, the higher gold prices go. And the wild cards. Now you're looking at, there is a strong probability of .com bust 2.0. Here. I mean, this is just like some of the news that came out. Israel says it will occupy southern Syria indefinitely. Trump doubles down on proposal to move Gazans into Egypt and Jordan. Times of Israel. So going back, why is gold prices going up? Because a lot of people are concerned about the Israel war ramping up. They're talking more and more about ramping it up against Iran and the Ukraine war. So if these wars ramp up, that's why people are staying in the precious metal. And
just flight to safety.
Exactly.
Okay. So the traditional trade is what it is. The commercial real estate potential bust, okay, that you're calling for in the next 12 to 24 months, all these renewals coming due. What's the counter trade? How does somebody not get crushed? How does an investor not get crushed if that happens? What's the counter trade? Gold again?
Oh, gold prices will skyrocket because banks are going to go down. Again, go back to the panic of 08.
Now I look at the 08. This is what I wanted to bring up. I look at 08. I remember it vividly. Gold suffered. Everything suffered initially, right? It did rally to a new record high. By 2011, it hit that with the debt ceiling fiasco under Obama. So would you see the commercial real estate bust as a cataclysmic event for the markets, but some assets, it would be a temporary dip before a surge higher, particularly gold and other precious metals, I would imagine?
No, because when the banks go down, gold prices spike. When the banks go bust, they go back to 2023. when Signature Bank, Silicon, and First Republic went bust. Look what happened.
Yeah.
Gold prices went up, markets went down.
There's another big trend, and this is, I'm really excited to talk to you about this one because this has been on my mind forever. It's the fertility crisis. You know, in the 1960s, the average American or North American woman was having about 3.5 kids. Today, it's about 1.4. I think we're in the midst of a fertility crisis in the Western world and much of the world. A, do you agree? And B, what's that going to do for asset prices?
I don't. No, I don't agree at all. Let's look at the numbers. Go back 100 years ago. How many people were on the planet?
I guess about 3 billion.
Yeah, two. We added
Yeah.
6 billion in 100 years.
Mm-hmm.
Go back to China. 100 years ago, what do they have? 500 million. What do they got now?
1 point something billion. They're shrinking though.
1.4 billion.
Yeah.
They added a billion, almost a billion people. There's not going to be a crisis. I'm the first of the baby boom generation.
Right.
It's right after World War II.
Mm-hmm.
Why was there a baby boom? Because
All the
rather
men.
than getting your brains blown out, you're screwing your brains out. All right, it's as simple as that. My favorite music that nobody knows, and I say nobody, I'm talking 99.99%. 1946 to 1952. They called it race music. The end of the war. It was only on black radio stations. There were thousands of radio stations. My generation and my older brothers and sisters never heard this stuff. Smiley Lewis, Red Price Suck. It's after the war. All these guys are singing about, and the women, is getting high, getting laid, and getting drunk.
Really?
It's after. Oh yeah, it's a riot. When I say what I have, you heard of Van Morrison, right?
Yeah, yeah.
All right, Van Morrison wanted to meet me 2 years ago, and he was out on tour and his guitar player says, "Oh, I know Celente." So I met Van Morrison down at the Forest Hills Stadium, and then his guitar player, who doesn't live far from me over here, came over to my place, John Patania. And I started playing. I have cassette tapes. I had tons of them. I had thousands of hours from 1984. I did it to about 1996. Then I took off this radio station. It's a whole long story. I had to get an aerial put up on top of a tree where top fell off to get Bridgeport, Connecticut. This guy used to do it every Sunday from 6 to 9 p.m. Bill Dolan. John Patania never heard of this music. This is Van Morrison's guitar player. He said, what you have is a treasure. All they were singing about was having a great time.
Mm.
And everybody's up to 4 o'clock in the morning. We're,
Yeah.
going to rock, we're going to roll, we're going to bop, we're going to
Yeah.
stroll, on and on and on and on and on and on. Going back, that's the baby boom generation. The economy, after the war, people screwed their brains out.
Mm-hmm.
And now it's a different story for a number of reasons. And one of them is, again, when I was a young guy, there were things called hardware stores, grocery stores, drug stores, fish stores, stationary stores. Now they're all chains. The middle class is shrinking. You can't afford to buy a house.
Mm.
All right? It's a whole different trip. You're not getting, less people are getting married. They can't afford it to have families. So it's going to level out. There's no question about it. But again, you got another 6 billion people than you had 100 years ago. You still got plenty of people here.
So you see it as more of a cyclical thing, a sign of the times, ebbs and flows. Okay. That's reassuring for me because I was in the doomsday camp that we're all headed to a potentially mass extinction event in 500 years. But I actually looked at it more near term as, okay, what is this going to do for asset prices if the population continues to, or if the fertility rate continues to decline? But I think you have a pretty level-headed approach about it. One thing I really enjoy about you and listening to you on various platforms is while you talk about serious stuff, you're obviously a very successful investor and forecaster, but you talk about serious stuff. You know the potential threats in this world. Sometimes you have to focus on the negativity in your writings and your publications, but you seem to have a pretty damn good life. and a pretty damn good outlook on life. How do you find that balance? And what would you say the key to happiness is in your life? Because you're looking at all this stuff every day that gives a lot of people angst, economic data, societal changes, wars, etc. And you're building thesis on that, investing and publishing the Trends Journal based off of this information that you're consumed by. But your life seems pretty damn good. What is it? What's the key to your happiness? How do you find that balance?
One of the first books I worked on was Natural Healing back in the 1980s. I have an honorary doctorate from the National University of Health Sciences, the work I've done in complementary and integrated medicine. You got to get in the best shape you can, physically, emotionally, and spiritually. And again, like I said, I pull a lot of crap in my life, My sister, by the way, who passed away recently,
Sorry to hear
opened up the second topless go-go lounge in New York City.
No kidding.
And hold on one second, I'll show you this. I was a bartender there, 68. You ready?
I'm ready.
All right, here you go. Grace's
Very.
Lucky Lounge.
Wow. How old were you at the time when you were bartending?
22.
That was good
I'm
good
telling you,
time.
man, like I said, I had a while. Then the mafia left her alone, by the way. The mafia was big back then because she was an Italian woman. She was a woman, an Italian. And not only that, they helped her. Then she moved to Florida. She was there from 68 to 84 and opened up.
So she was an entrepreneur in that space for her entire working career, or?
Yeah. And then then she got a stroke. And then she got 2 strokes. And I took her out of a nursing home and I had her up here. But I had her up here, someone taking care of her 24 hours a day. She was doing great. And then she got shingles, and then she got put in the hospital, and she got sepsis and pneumonia and checked out. But anyway, matter of fact, yesterday was her birthday, and she was great to me. We grew up in the Bronx. She was 8 years older than me. She broke her arm, and they put the cast on wrong. And at 12 years old, gangrene set in when it happened, and she lost 3/4 of her hand.
Oh,
so
my
she became a
goodness.
real fighter. Yeah.
I bet.
Anyway, so you were asking me about how do I stay?
Yeah,
I
given.
enjoy. If you in my office here, upstairs and down, I have over 200 plants. A lot of them go outside during the summer, and they come in during the winter. I have art all over.
Nice.
It's a whole nother world. And one of my great girlfriends, Marie Pierre, who is French and a great artist, used to say, art is the way of finding the true meaning of the human spirit.
Mm.
And I believe that 1,000%. So I stay in the best shape I can. I work out every day. And by the way, Marie Pierre's brother, Francois, was the left shoulder of Jacques Chirac and Mitterrand.
No kidding.
So when I used to go to France, it was, and my close combat teacher, John Perkins, may he rest in peace, he used to go to Palais Élysée and work out with these guys. So it's about staying in shape every way that you can. And I told you I launched Occupy Peace. I try to do as much as I can for the human spirit. And I just had a friend up here who's worth about $20 million, $30 million. And he started from nothing, this guy. And he said, I just got another car. I'm bringing a Bentley in from England. It's going to cost me $90,000, but I got a lot of work on it too. I said, look at all the cars you got. I said, what are you doing for society? What are you doing for humanity? Well, I said, hey, man, what are you doing for humanity? What are you doing? And it goes back to the billionaires. What are you doing? Oh, we got these funds that, you're doing shit. We need a renaissance. Alla Romana et all'antica, in the manner of the Romans and the ancients, they said at the beginning of the Renaissance, after 60% of Europe was wiped out because of the filthy sanitation. But who made it happen? The Medicis. You can't do it without the dough. Could you imagine if Gates or Zuckerberg or Bezos gave $1 billion for a renaissance each? Boop, we'd have it tomorrow. So to me, you ask me, do the best you can in any way you can.
Yeah, well said, man. Well said. Last question. Call it 10-year time horizon. In that time period, if you could only make one investment, one asset class, what would you do?
Not allowed to give financial advice. Speaking for myself?
Yes.
Speaking for myself, I would still bet on Bitcoin and gold. And real estate. Real estate is always, it goes up and down, and people are still going to be buying houses. They're still
Yeah.
going to be looking. And so real estate is always, if it's a smart real estate investment, wait for prices to see what's going to happen. But to me, real estate is a good investment.
I've really, really enjoyed this conversation, Gerald. Before we wrap up, where can our viewers find you online? I mentioned the Trends Journal, but perhaps elaborate on what you have with the Trends Journal and where they can find you online.
Yeah, the trendsjournal.com. And we're giving a magazine that there's nothing like it. Nothing comes close to it in the world.
I second that. The depth of research, I've never seen it. I've never read or seen a financial publication, a geopolitical publication, just covering all corners of the globe and all aspects of the economy. It's a phenomenal publication.
Thank you. And it's only $2.56 a week. Journalism's dead. It's gone. The big pictures they put up now. No more data. And if you want to see the YouTubes, it's either Gerald Celente or Trends Journal. We're at a crisis point here. If these wars escalate, it's nuclear annihilation. And that's not a fairy tale.
What is the riskiest region right now that will draw in that could potentially evolve into a global war?
Both the Ukraine war and the Israel war. Again, you look at the Trump administration in line with the Israelis about their hatred against Iran. If they go to war against Iran, there's a thing called, the Israelis have what they call, you can look it up, Samson, SAMSON, Samson option. If they lose, they go nuclear. They got between 200 to 400 nuclear warheads, Israel. You look at the numbers. Iran is highly advanced militarily and scientifically. There are 91 million of them versus 7 million Jewish people living in Israel. You don't have to be good at numbers to figure out who's going to win. And there's more and more talk. Those are my two concerns. Again, World War II is not ancient history. 25 million Russians died in that war in Operation Barbarossa by Hitler. And they were the first to defeat the Germans, by the way.
And what they did to the Germans after was atrocious as well. Brutal. And it's not talked about very much, but it was absolutely horrific what happened after, the war supposedly had ended and Russia was occupying.
Again, you keep these wars going.
Yeah.
As they say, payback's a bitch.
Yeah,
we need peace, so I do everything I can. But again, you need money to do it.
Yeah.
And, I do as much as I can as one guy. These things cost me a lot of money when I put them on.
Absolutely. Yeah.
But it's if you need the billionaires or multimillionaires behind it, and they're not doing crap.
Do you think Trump can keep the markets together for 2025? Is it an up year?
He'll do it, but there's the wild cards. And again, you're looking at the .com bust 2.0, and the office building busted. No one is talking about. That's going to have it cause the banks to go bust. They'll do everything they can to pump it up. Zero interest rate policy, more quantitative easing. By the way, my track record's there. I call the 1987 stock market crash, the .com bust, on and on. I thought things would bust again in 2012. They didn't teach me about zero interest rate policy or a thing called quantitative easing in economics 101 at graduate school.
Yeah, new
They'll
monetary.
Make up anything.
Exactly. New inventions, new monetary tools created out of thin air. Interesting. Well, Gerald, it's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you so much for coming on. We'll have to have you back in a few months, but I really appreciated it.
My pleasure. Thank you.